Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at how the SubQuery dictionary works. Now in the documentation website here you can see that if you go to run a project, on the left hand side there's a reference on how to use a dictionary. Now the dictionary really is a project that pre-indexes the location of all the events and extrinsics within a specific chain. And this allows your project, your node service, to skip various locations when it's indexing and grabbing data from a block, instead of inspecting each and every block. What this means is that you can achieve performance increases of up to about 10 times the speed. Now you can add this dictionary endpoint to your project YAML or your manifest file, or you can also run it directly in the command line by passing in the network dictionary flag. Also, if you do a search for dictionary in the tutorials, it shows you how you can incorporate this. As mentioned, you just copy this out and paste it into your manifest file in the network section, and you're up and running. Now, before we dig deeper into when we should use a dictionary or what happens when it's used, let's first recap on how it works. And the best way to understand this is to look at the code. So let's jump in and check that out. Let's go into Visual Studio Code. And what I'm going to do first is let's go and create the startup project. SubQuery init. Let's accept the defaults here. And the reason why I'm doing this is if I open up the project YAML file, you'll notice that the dictionary project here is already provided by default. This wasn't always the case. So let's take a look at the actual code itself. And if I jump into SubQuery, we'll go into packages, we'll go into node. And if I check out the changelog and do a search for dictionary, scroll down, you can see that the dictionary was created in June this year. It was added to massively improve indexing speed. So in June this year, this extra line was included by default in the starter project. It's an optional field, so you don't have to use it. I can comment this out and all your projects will run fine. However, we do recommend it because it can increase the performance. So the next question you might be asking is, where does this URL come from? Well, to answer that, let's jump into the SubQuery homepage. We'll go to Explorer. And what this is a place that hosts a whole bunch of projects provided by the community. And if I go down and do a search for dictionary, you can see we've got three here. We've got the Polkadot one, the Kusama, which is the testnet, and also a Karura dictionary created and provided free of charge to everyone by the Akala network team. If we jump into the Polkadot one, which is what we're interested in, what you can see here is we've got an API query endpoint here. So if I copy this and compare this to what was provided, you can see that they're exactly the same. What this tells us is that if your project is using this dictionary endpoint, what it's really doing is it's querying the Polkadot dictionary project in order to increase the speed of your project. Now, the next question you might have is, how does this actually work? To answer that question, we can jump into the GitHub code itself. Now, instead of jumping into this code here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to download this onto my local environment. So let me copy the URL. I'll jump back into VS Code and I'm going to do a git clone of the dictionary project. Here it is here. And if I go into the source, mappings and handler, you can see that there are three functions inside. We've got the handle block, handle event, and also the handle call. And these functions effectively extract information from the blockchain such as block height, the module, the event, and also the call. And this data is then stored in a database. So when you go ahead and use the Polkadot dictionary from Explorer, all the infrastructure is taken care for you. What I'm going to do here though is run this locally so you can see what's happening under the covers. To do that, we're first going to have to build the dictionary project. To build the dictionary project, let's go and navigate into the actual dictionary folder first. And then I'll go the standard yarn install or just yarn, they both work. And then I'll go cogen and build the standard commands. You get used to this after a while. Cogen and then build. And then after this, typically you'd run maybe Docker compose, but I'm going to run this locally because I do have Postgres installed. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a separate database name. So let's go db database, and I'm going to call it dictionary, like so. And I'll also export my db user, like so. Now I'm going to go and run this project. To do this, I'll go SubQuery node. The if flag will tell the node where this project sits, the project directory. Because I'm already in the project directory, I just hit dot for the current directory, hit enter, and I get an error here because this database called a dictionary does not exist. And that is correct, because if I open up pgadmin down here, you can see that I've got two databases. So I'm going to create one called a dictionary. And let's just do a quick check. I've got nothing inside my schema. If I go ahead and now start the project again, that's running in the background. If I refresh the dictionary, I can see I've got a public schema appear. And if I refresh this again, I'll get a subquery _1 appear as well. So the project has built these tables, and under public, you'll see that I've got a subquery table here. Let's view the data here. This just contains some standard information such as the name of the project, the next block height. But the next table or schema is the most interesting one. Under here, we've got three. We've got events, extrinsics, and spec version. So if we look at the first 100 rows of events, say, you can see we've got module, event, and block height. Now, if we go back to the code, you'll see we've got module, event, and block height. And if I go ahead and look at, say, the extrinsic table, I should see module, call, block height, success, and assigned. So let's do that. And there we have it, module, call, block height, success, and assigned. So now you can see that under the covers, what the dictionary project does is it's grabbing the information from the blockchain, storing it in a database, and indexing it for fast access. So your project actually queries this database instead of the blockchain directly. So let's now stop this node, and we'll go back into the documentation here. So now that we know a little bit about how the dictionary project works and how to incorporate this into your project, let's take a look at what happens when the dictionary is not used. So if you bypass this or you comment this out, your project will basically fetch every block data via the Polkadot API according to the batch size, which by default is 100. It places this in a buffer for processing later. And what it does is it checks the buffer while processing the block data for the events, the extrinsics, And if there are any filters, it will try to match those as well. But when you do use a dictionary, the indexer will take the call and the events filters as a parameter. It merges this into the GraphQL query. And then what it does is it will understand which block contains the data that you're looking for. Once it knows this, it then just goes into those specific blocks. This allows your project to run much quicker than going into every block and saying, is my data there? Now, there are certain times when the dictionary is not useful. So for example, when you're using a block handler to grab data from the chain, and that information is in every block. So basically you need to go into every block anyway. If this is the case, then the dictionary is not going to give you any added performance. So there you have it. Adding a dictionary into your project is very simple. If you want to understand more, you can always inspect or download the code for the dictionary in GitHub. And you can always refer to the documentation here on understanding when a dictionary is useful and when it is not useful. Catch you next time.